So hello and welcome to this new automation Let's Play Against All Odds, where we will play as a boutique manufacturer of roadsters in Archana. And the goal of the Let's Play is to realize the vision of one man, Mayster. But unfortunately, he only has the vision of a light roadster, but hardly anything else. So we have to set things up to make it a bit difficult for him. So we start with insane difficulty and then make it even more insane. So the year is 1957. He has no money. He has inherited a medium plot of land from his uncle. He has a friend who works in the aircraft industry and she knows something about engines, so we can give it to engine tech pool. We can tone down the competition to 100. This will be difficult enough as it is. So you see we have 100 as a difficulty modifier for our score. And the 2 tech pool in Archana in 1957 means we're basically having an engine family tech pool slightly above 2, so everything else will be minus 1.7 or so. So behind the curve very much compared to the global standard. And we keep the other factors as they are, so high market volatility is fine, no dealership networks, no one has ever heard of the car. But there are a bunch of engineering friends, so we can keep engineering time at 100%, so they have a basic idea of what they are doing. So that's the setup. So let's start the campaign. And let's start a new car project. And it shall be a roadster, or as it's called here, a sporty convertible. And Mayster knows what he wants, so we can build it manually. So first choice is car body, so it needs to be a coupe with a soft top convertible. It needs to be available, so 1957 with a minus 1.7 tech pool means everything from 1955 onwards. So it shouldn't be too large, so we can reduce wheelbase to maybe 2.5. So of the recent bodies, we have these 4 options. This may be a bit too small. It shouldn't be too overall twitchy. So we can eliminate this one. So then we are left with these 3. And looking at the other options, so this is limited just to 2-seaters, whereas this one has the convertible and 1 coupe option as a 2-seater, but also options for 2+2 and a wagon, so a shooting brake if we ever want to make one. So then this one is and the other one here looks too much like a regular car, so that is not the option that we're going to choose. So a genuine coupe. Mayster is also an engineer in the marine industry, so he knows how to work fiberglass. It will be a space frame made of steel, front engine, double wishbone front suspension, and independent rear suspension. Now to the engine, which will be based on the engine block of a light aircraft engine. So thanks to his engineering friend, Natalia Karava, so she wants to put her initials in front, and then it will be a boxer 4, as typical for the earliest light aircraft engines. And we start with a 1.6 liter in the year 1957. So boxer 4, cast iron block, don't have any other choice anyway, push rod, aluminium head, And the dimensions built on the Lycomov 0145 engine, just a bit destroked, because these light aircraft engines of the time were usually pretty undersquare, whereas here we want to have oversquare. So we keep the bore, but reduce the stroke to something more reasonable, that we get a 2-liter engine, or engine block at least, and then we will reduce it further for our first engine just to 1.6. Let's see whether we can get away with at least +1 in quality. So let's reduce maybe the bore a bit and the stroke even more, so that we get to 1.6. So something like, yeah, something like this. So we go for lightness and see what else we need. And I always like to get the stats in first. So a bit of a jump. Single barrel twin carb setup. We probably would be fine with single barrel single carb just to get the maximum power in terms of game terms, but I think it was common back then that for race cars you had to keep the basic carburetor overall setup, and the twin carb will give more leeway for tuning. We're not too overly ambitious, so we keep it with standard mid intake and headers, and one muffler, no dual exhaust setup, and so we have our first stats. Now we can work with that. So I think first order of business is higher RPM limit, then to adjust the sizing. So 80 to 90% usually gives the best flows. I'm going for 90 so that the engine has a bit more tuning potential, because the tires of the area were pretty terrible. And so yeah, open exhaust, that shouldn't strangle too much, and headers should strangle slightly to get the most out of it. I think also we need stiffer springs and lifters. Yes. More revs. And probably also more compression. Oh yeah, a lot. Which fuel do we want to use? So where can we sell? So that different countries have different availability of fuel. So look at the markets. 1957 with an Archana start, we can sell in Archana and we can sell in Delua. Archana unfortunately doesn't have a market for roadsters, so that's out. Delua has, and if we look at the overall possible revenue, so the market is reasonably sizable and we want to have a good chunk of that. So Delua, what kind of fuel do they have? 92 and 98. So if we go for 92, do a little bit of timing margin, because yeah, fuel in Archana is always a bit varied in quality, so they want to be on the cautious side. They don't really know how the fuel will be in Delua. Fuel map can probably increase it a bit to get more throttle response, make it a bit sportier. Maybe a bit more compression with the better fuel. Yeah, so that we see a little bit of yellow up top. We don't need to be that ambitious with the cam profile, so 30 is fine. And springs and lifters look good. Can we rev it? Yeah, it likes to have a bit higher revs, and then also a bit more springs and lifters. No stress, that's great. Bit small now, the carb and the intake. Headers look, can probably also a bit larger. Oh, they are fine. 66.5, so let's make it 60 to satisfy my OCD. So something like this. Quality, let's see. We have everything at 0 at the moment. We have engine family +1, and with minus 1.6 tech pool, this is already plus 1.6. So let's see whether we can actually keep everything at 0. And I think what I can do already is give it -2 quality for bottom end, because we are well below the power density limit as it is. Can we reduce the balancing mass for sportiness? Yes. So a little bit, so that we keep a modest reliability, but get a good throttle response as well. Let's see whether we can add more quality later when we do the engineering for production. So that's our engine, which 66 horsepower. Car body, so convertible. Want to have a roadster. Let's design it really quick based on the sandbox. So the nice thing is you can import stuff, and I've already prepared that. So first the morphs. So we don't need these fins in the back, in the front and in the back, because these are just capitalist inventions. I also can add the fixtures. So paste fixtures override. There we go, looks like a car. Alright. So next is to paint it. First we can remove the roof. So we put on default transparency for the roof. And here already a fixture here that hides the rear glass. Otherwise, color-wise, they can get their hands on surplus paint from the aircraft industry, from the roundels, so a nice yellow like this. And what we can also do is give the windows a bit more transparency to make it more airy. Did everything copy well onto this? This looks good. This dash filler didn't get the memo, so this is cloth dark gray. The rest looks fine. Bit of a basic front, but I don't have much experience with car design, so they keep everything pretty basic. Also from the parts bin of my other company in Archana, so the rear lights, the door handles, and some other stuff out of the parts bin. Probably at this point the cockpit would look less fancy, but I'm not going to change the cockpit look every time for every evolution. They wouldn't have seat belts, but let's just close over that, and otherwise this looks pretty neat. Wheels. So some basic classic sports wheels maybe. Maybe even keep steel for the first iteration that look like steel. Nah, just go with classic sport. I mean, maybe something that looks a bit steelish. So something like this maybe, or yeah, maybe this looks, I think, basic enough for wheels. Did the exhaust didn't connect because we don't have a drivetrain selected yet. So let's continue with car engineering. So rear-wheel drive, yeah. So exhaust is connected. That works, great. So rear-wheel drive, 4-speed manual, open diff. Let's worry about the settings later. So technically, in game terms, for tires, we could choose now radial, which is the obvious choice. But I don't think it really has made it to Archanan mainstream just yet. So we go for the first iteration with sports cross-ply. Again, I worry about the settings later, except I'm putting some rim offset on that it actually looks like a car and not something else entirely. Yeah, these are roughly okay. Drum brakes, nothing else available. No under tray. Cooling airflow is fine. Interior, sport interior with a premium radio, but -3 quality. This is the biggest cost factor, as we'll see once we get our stats. Rack and pinion steering, standard safety. What would that be? Safety glass, dashboard controls partially recessed, bumpers designed for impact absorption, some dashboard padding, So cloth, a front panel crash protection in mind, and they already have lap seat belts. Okay, yeah, then we can keep that. That's probably something they would do at this point, if that's the standard. Standard springs, sporty tune, and then let's worry about the details. I think starting with wheels and wheel setting. So, do they want more profile? Yes, so they probably might want smaller wheels to begin with if they get the profile. This looks already good. So drivability and sportiness still a bit oversteery. So more profile, and the tires are getting cheaper. So I think get it even more cheaper than 4.9. Not really. So this is a decent sweet spot, because I want to keep a low profile as well, because that's sportier. We can do something more with suspension, so more understeer. So let's lose the rear sway bar. Let's lose the front camber. So still more, so lower rear springs. These are a bit stiff anyway. And the dampers are also a bit stiff, because it's not a pure sports car, it should also be a bit of a cruiser, so that we get some modest comfort here. These are still pretty high, pretty low roll angle. So one tune further down. Stiffer springs from the front. How important is comfort? Not really. Want sportiness, okay, keep it at that, and also front dampers as well. So sportiness is almost good, so need some positive toe, yes, and yes, I lose a bit of sportiness but gain drivability. So this roll angle looks a bit better. Or can we have less sway bars and yeah, something like this. Okay, gearing. Just slightly above top speed. Probably, yeah, higher first gear, but not too much. We're running into drivability issues. Shorter spread? No. Wider spread? No, that was the sweet spot. So the Lua convertible sports. Price perception, low top speed, but that's the function of our engine. I'm not yet adding quality, because I want to see how the engineering looks. Brakes. These values are a bit high. So front brake force, bit stronger rear brakes as well, and much less force. So especially for decent beam handling, the rear full blue line needs to hug the grip limit. 15, let's get some lesser brake pads. Some modest quality and drivability also. So more brake strength. Still have pretty high values here. Question is, how big would the difference be with bigger brakes? That's actually worse in terms of sportiness, interestingly. So no. So would less be better? If we had readjust the brake force? Basically the same, we lose a tiny bit of drivability. And it's slightly cheaper, so yeah, this was probably then fine. Yeah, interior -3, so if we were to go to -2, 200 bucks more, or 130 bucks more. But that's probably the part where they would have to skimp the most. And weight distribution? No, it's fine. I don't want to make it lighter because that loses reliability. I don't want to make it heavier because that loses sportiness, and both makes it more expensive. And yeah, suspension 99.1, 99.9 is probably as good as it gets. Okay, that's the car. Nothing serious here in terms of warnings. The brake fade we had, but that doesn't matter in terms of stats, so that's fine. Engineering time, whoa. However, we're going to, I'm not going to worry about this at this point. Let's look at the demand first and work backwards from there. So same here. Although we can't set up the factory because we'll have someone in the aircraft industry building this for you. So that's Alyosha Airplanes of Archana. So they build the engines for us. We need an, or they have an iron foundry. That's the factory setup. Again, we worry about engineering later. I always like to work back from demand. Car factory. The only thing we'll be able to afford on a loan is the tiny one. So this will be where we will build our first car. That's the shed. Again, what's the demand? And that's the interesting part. And also let's work backwards of what people can afford. So what's interesting is the little market, convertible sport, and their budget. So average 25k, but with a pretty big spread. So let's start with 20k. This was a bit finicky here. So do they want less? So this was -5, -6. This doesn't do much. So that's. Do they want higher prices? Because some cars, and especially the more luxurious ones, become more attractive. Now this is slightly better. They also sell less, so let's keep it around that. Let's make a big jump first to the actual average, so 25. But this highly depends on the competition, whether we can actually demand this kind of price. So we sell 220. And this is 154, so I think purely demand-wise, this isn't wise. So back to 20. So we have an overall rather low demand. And we also need to be pretty cost efficient, and we can, based on the factory setup, produce way less cars and are still very good to satisfy the low demand. So that's useful information. So as a baseline for the factory, and we can start with the factory setup first, we certainly don't need maximum of 3 shifts. So it takes 7 months to build the whole thing, the tiny factory. So then we can afford better workers. And 1 shift will probably be plenty. So automation and tooling. And the key thing here is the possible profit per car. And also the overall cost per car. And the number of cars. So if I increase tooling, the profit per car goes up. Number of cars go up. And the construction cost also increased, but very, very little. So with this difference, these 130,000 per tooling doesn't really matter that much. Well, let's go with the the major factor is the major tooling and the minor tooling, and I think that's not that much for that extra profit. Automation, interestingly, has the same effect. Despite this being just a small factory, so we get higher profit, but we get less cars with less efficiency. But with these low numbers, it doesn't really matter whether we produce 72 or 71 or 70, and the cost does go up a bit more. So maybe something like this. Then we can probably get better workers since we have automated things a bit better. So that's the factory setup. So demand. So this looks a little bit better, but we still produce way too many cars, which is good. So then we can reduce the tooling, because this will be a pretty manual affair. Let's start with something extreme 0. And then do the opposite for the process, because this cuts off material cost here, and fiberglass is expensive. So we had 7 months to build a factory, so that's the goal here. We also probably don't want to spend that much, so 550 is the minimum that we can have. If I increase funding, a few 10,000 doesn't matter, so here's a jump, so 600. And this is almost 7 months. That's awesome. I can probably put some quality somewhere with the amount of pressure that I can apply. Something I want to do. A little bit more engineering time doesn't hurt. So that some stats get better for the trade-off of a bit of reliability. So maybe car body, although this is probably more reliability out of the slider, so that would probably be a wash. And also the engineering time is rather substantial. Same for drivetrain, so no. Wheels doesn't have that much better stats. Brakes, a huge jump in engineering time, also a huge jump in stats. Probably not, something small. Yeah, this doesn't do much. Suspension, 70.3, and slightly better stats. So let's say the suspension and wheels also give sportiness. Aero, we can reduce aero even. That doesn't, because aero has no big effect on anything except sportiness. And the engineering time reduction is a bit substantial. Okay, that's good. This didn't do much. Safety is fine. I don't want to touch that. Your drivetrain is a big jump. Body also. So not really in terms of quality. So I'd rather go then for familiarity or something. So it's even 7.1, yeah. So then we can probably play around with these a little bit. Let's see what the effect is, but I'll also tweak the engine first to that we get the actual picture. And yeah, huge engineering time here, but we don't need much tooling. Want to reduce the funding as well, so the same sweet spot, so 550. And here we can. So one interesting thing is if I increase process optimization, the time goes up, but the cost doesn't. Although 5%, this 30 bucks, I'm not sure this matters, as opposed to less pressure, which makes it more expensive. So here we go, a little bit more funding. A bit less funding so that we stay on the 550,000. So something like this, and then so what's the engine cost? 4K, which is a lot. How would tooling affect the whole thing if I set tooling to 10, which I can probably then compensate for with reliability or pressure. That's 400 less, and I think that's an argument to keep some tooling here and then work around that. So more pressure. So 550,000 and more funding, and we can have less pressure, and here we're running into the sweet spot again. So yeah, cheaper engines, decent pressure. Take a bit of a hit in terms of reliability, but I think that's okay. That's something we have to invest. Again, 7 months, because the factory takes 7 months. So these are now perfectly aligned. How does our forecast look? All in the green. We still can produce less cars, and we have to adjust the shifts, and probably can increase quality control a little bit. So minimum shifts makes the whole thing a bit more expensive. 18.6. Here we have 19, so this is cheaper, but I don't want to overproduce. And then I have to take that hit. So we make less cars with less tooling, but at the same time less profit per car. So we can probably then go a little bit less here, a little bit less here. So and then increase the quality threshold that we also make less cars. So maybe aim for 40. And the recall rates are nicely low. At least there is that. Can we sell more cars by making the car cheaper? So 19.5, 215 in the first year. $10 more, and I probably can move the break-even point to the second year. So 18.5. So from 225 to 245, and this looks slightly better, but still below one shift. How does the profit change? So this is now 2 in the second year, and 245 cars. Now this makes the profit worse, and it's still not one shift. It's close, but the profit is more important, so less cars is better. $204 in the second year. $216. $218. So this is a sweet spot. So I'm going then for less, at least produce some cars. All right. So let's give the car a name, and it's the Triumph in Archanan, of course, and it's the 1.6 Roadster. So one thing that we should still check, whether more tooling, less process makes the car more profitable, although I don't really need more cars, but anyway, one quick check, that's worth it. So profit per car is 17.2. So if I go for 10 tooling and reduce process, way worse. So yeah. Whether we need lots of people to do manual work, that's not a big issue. The big issue is saving a lot of input material in terms of fiberglass. And have to, yeah, 566 and not 600, because that's all part of the loan. So can we finance things at all? Yes, we can. So full loan coverage, that's good. But we have one further thing to do before we can sign this off. And that's of course taking the prototype for a test drive in BeamNG. So export. Oh, I have to set the window transparency again. And what we also can check before we do that, if we have some less quality in engine top end and exhaust, we're losing 1 horsepower. We're losing a bit of reliability. Is this okay? Exhaust. So then a bit worse top end. We can actually go back to 66 through less compression. So I think that's a nice trade-off that we have. We also have a bit of less material cost that we compensate here. I don't want to reduce fuel system because that takes a big hit on reliability. And yes, we can get away with our +1 for engine family, which will serve us well in the future. So then that's that. Have to readjust engine engineering, maybe a bit more tooling as well. So this window transparency now hopefully exports properly. So let's try this again. And let's have a test drive in BeamNG. And where would we test our car in 1957 Archana? Because we don't have any kind of test track, or there aren't any kind of test tracks. So I think the best thing to do is to go to a deserted Archanan mountain road around the Archanan basin early Sunday morning where no one else is around, and then put the car through its paces and let's see how it drives. And so that was one timed lap, and as one could see, despite the cross-ply tires, very controllable, even on the limit, and you can toss it about. On the other hand, it feels certainly more like a slow car fast, so it doesn't overwhelm the tires, but overall certainly ready to put into production. And that's what we're going to do in the next episode. See you then.